Now, Craig, I'm going to New South Wales. We've talked about racial profiling here. Is there suburb profiling going on at the SCG? They're targeting people who live in certain suburbs like Auburn. If they go there, they're going to get massive fines. Is this true?
Well, Corey, I saw the news and I was absolutely shocked. So we have a leper colony out there at Auburn. The reality is we've had 4 coronavirus infections, 4, in the last 24 hours in a state of 8 million people. That's like 1 in 2 million chance. You have more chance of winning the lottery. And it's not even said whether these people are even sick, whether they're asymptomatic or it doesn't appear that they're in hospital, or on in ICU. But to pick on one suburb like that and say, sorry, you people can't buy tickets to a certain event, because I think we're sort of getting close to peak madness here.
Oh, we're not even close to peak madness yet, mate. Trust me, there's more crazy stuff to come, unfortunately. I mean, you think you've got it hard. Think about what happened in Victoria, Michael Kroger. Is there any chance that it's going to happen again in Victoria, this sort of craziness?
Oh, every chance. I'm still gobsmacked, Corey, that a Premier who can preside through his own incompetence over the death of 800 people is still in office. I mean, what, he hasn't resigned in shame and gone to live overseas in exile? No, he's still drawing a $400,000 salary as Premier of Victoria with 800 people having died on his watch. So nothing surprises me about what's going on here in Victoria. And the one thing these governments have never told us is, these state governments, are we going for eradication or are we just trying to minimise the spread of the virus? And what's very clear is it's eradication. As long as we know that, but we don't know that. They don't tell us that. They just say, we'd like to have days of, no viruses. But the problem is these rules are changing all day long. People stopped at the Melbourne, Sydney, Victoria, New South Wales border recently. A woman couldn't get across the border to go to her mother's funeral, etc., etc. Repeat of all the scandals that took place on the Queensland border a couple of months ago. No, the governments should make it clear as to what their strategy is, and then we all know it. But this random shoot from the hip, banning, unbanning suburbs, borders closing and opening, it's a mess, and the public really don't know what's going on, and they're sick of it. And it took 6 hours, by the way, for some people to get tested here in Melbourne on the weekend. 6 hours in the queue.
It's just extraordinary, the lack of preparation. But let's go back to when this corona stuff first happened. It was all about flattening the curve, Craig, so that our hospital system didn't get overwhelmed. Now, you can flatten the curve, still have people testing positive, take appropriate measures, and our hospital system in this country, thank goodness, has not been overwhelmed at all. Is New South Wales, chock-a-block full of people on respirators and waiting in, to check out, or is this just an overreaction?
Well, Corey, last time I looked, there were, I think, 10 people in New South Wales that were hospitalised due to COVID. But you had on Sky News about 6 months ago Professor Thomas Borody, one of the great medical brains of our nation, on Sky News saying he could clear all this up if he was given permission to use ivermectin in 6 to 8 weeks. Now, we've still got our National COVID Evidence Task Force still not looking at the trials. There are 28 now trials showing ivermectin is highly effective, especially for prophylaxis. And our National COVID Evidence Task Force, on their own website, has only looked at 3. If these bureaucrats had have listened to Professor Borody 6 months ago, we wouldn't be in this mess and this chaos that we currently are.
Do you think, Craig, if I could just follow up on this, do you think it's a case that maybe the New South Wales government has seen how a swift and hard and tough response has emboldened the political fortunes of some? And it's no secret that Gladys Berejiklian's been under the pump. Wouldn't it be reasonable to presume that maybe she wants a bit of that gravitas and saviour complex to rub off on her?
Well, Corey, you make a very good point. We've seen in Western Australia and also Queensland and down there in Victoria, the tougher and more irrational and unreasonable lockdown provisions that have been put in place, and the more harm that it's done to very small groups of people, the more popular those state premiers have become. And I think it's actually a very disappointing situation in Australia that people are prepared to almost be happy to see their fellow citizens' rights trampled upon because they think they are being so-called kept safe. Of course, we've got to do better of this as a nation. At the moment, the Constitution is being trampled on with these border closures. The irrationality that we are seeing down there on the border with Victorians trying to get back to their home state being locked out. So what happens is, so instead of getting back to Victoria, they're locked in Albury, where they don't have the facilities of their home and resources and friends and family that can support them, but they're staying in some rented accommodation in Albury, where they're more like they are actually coronavirus.
Craig, I've got to cut you off. I've got to cut you off, Craig. I'm sorry. And Michael, I've got to let you go. Thanks so much for your time. I wish we had more, but I'm completely out of it.